Welcome to the channel if it's your first time here, and welcome back if it's not. In today's Fix It Friday, which is sponsored by AliExpress, we're going to be looking at this. Now this is a box that has come from a viewer of mine, and he's asked me to do a mod on his console. Now quite often I don't do mods and things for people who watch my channel, largely because I'm an idiot and I might mess things up. But the owner of this has taken that into consideration and has still sent me this to look at. So I guess the first thing we should do is open the box and see what's inside, because I haven't done that yet. So what we have here is a Famicom AV and a Lava RGB version 2 mod for it. Now you might have seen a Famicom AV recently on my channel because I picked up a pre-modded one of these from AliExpress. Now I actually thought that it had the Lava RGB mod inside of it, but it didn't. It had the Tim Worthington RGB mod in it. So in this video today, rather than having a pre-modded console, we're going to mod this console with the Lava RGB version 2. So the Lava RGB board has come from AliExpress and it costs around about £50. Now, if you want to buy the Lava RGB mod or anything else, you can pick it up on AliExpress. And what I'll do is I'll put some codes on the screen in between my hands, and you can get some money off your purchases. Now, the codes do have an expiry date, which is shown on the screen, but if you look in the video description, I'll make sure there are some up-to-date codes in there. So yes, this is the Famicom AV. It was only released in Japan, and it doesn't have an RGB output through the AV out on the back. It is purely AV, so you know, the yellow, white and red composite outputs. And this is sort of argued to be the best iteration of the Famicom or NES, especially after it's had the RGB mod. And I really like these consoles. I think they're really cool. So this is a brand new version of the Lava RGB mod. And also, I don't think there are any videos of it being installed on YouTube. So firstly, if you found this video because you're looking to install this, then please, please, please hit that subscribe button and join the fun here, because if you're interested in this, you'll probably be interested in a lot of my other videos. So the version 2 of this mod has a micro or mini USB port on it. So you can actually upgrade the firmware and you can install new palettes. I think there's like 10 inbuilt or something, and you can add more. And apparently this has got a better chip than the original version, and there's more compatibility with sort of pretty much all the games. Now the way this works is you have to take the PPU, which is the picture processing unit, out of this device and swap in this board and plug the PPU into this board. So it is quite an involved install. So this video might go on for a while, but what I'll do is I'll make sure there's chapters and things. So if you're interested in a certain section, you can skip to that bit, but watch the whole of it. It's going to be good. Now, the interesting difference between this board and the original is there's an N and P jumper. Now I wonder if this works on PAL consoles, because the original Lava RGB mod doesn't work on PAL consoles. And I discovered that after I spent probably 2 days installing one of these on my PAL console. And when I realized my mistake, I tried to uninstall it and I destroyed my board. But yes, first thing we should do is we should test that it's working. So let me get out my little screen and we can make sure that it fires up and plays games. Okay, so we should test it, and for that I've got my EverDrive cartridge. Love EverDrive cartridges. They're a way of playing backed up copies of all your legally owned games, and you can also put test ROMs and things onto them so you can fully test consoles, which is awesome. Now I picked this up from AliExpress. I'll make sure I've got all the details on the screen and also a link in the video description if you want to pick one of these up. Right, let's see if it works. Power, output, yes, excellent. Right, let's just try a game that everyone will know, Super Mario Brothers. Okay, so we confirmed the console's working, and also just how bad the output is through the AV cables. Hopefully this mod is going to improve it dramatically. It really does look bobbins. So I guess what we need to do now is to open up our Famicom AV and get installing the mod. So let's get out the grey mat and do that. So to get into a Famicom AV, we need to flip it over and undo these 1, 2, 3, 4 game bit screws. So let's do it. And then you flip it over and pull the top off. Don't be disgusting. Lovely stuff. I love how it looks in here. It's so compact and cute. So our area of attention is here, and that is the PPU chip. So you've got the PPU there, and then above it, you've got the CPU. Now we need to remove the PPU chip very, very carefully because they're a pain to get replacements for. And then we need to put a socket where the PPU once was. I think what we should do quickly is just have a little look at the Lava RGB kit and see what it includes. So we've got the main board, which we've seen already. We've got this little board here, which is a sort of breakout board that taps into the multi AV out and turns it into a multi RGB AV out. We've got this little board here that offsets the main board. Now these will vary depending on what model of NES or Famicom you're fitting these in, but yeah, you need this particular one for the Famicom AV. It comes with 2 sockets, it comes with 2 sets of 20 riser pins, and then we've got a stack of riser pins here as well. And I'll go into detail as I'm installing them what goes where. I must say there are no real instructions for this kit, so I am going to be going in completely blind. Don't watch along and assume I'll get it right first time. There might be some issues as we go along, but we'll work through them together, hopefully. So what we need to do now is look back at this because we need to remove the main board and unsolder the PPU and put a nice socket in its place. And to take the board out, we've just got to remove these 2 Phillips screws at the back there. That last one was a little bit fiddly to get out. I had to unscrew it and pull up the board at the same time to make it come out of the thread hole. And weirdly, I thought I'd broken the posts here, but it actually looks sheared in half already. And yeah, there's no remnants of it. So these row of pins here are our PPU, and we need to desolder it essentially. So I think what I'm going to do that is I'm going to put on some fresh solder, and then I'm going to go along with my solder sucking gun and get rid of it. Now it does sound counterproductive putting a load of solder on and then sucking it off, but using nice fresh leaded solder should make it easier to come off rather than just trying to suck off this old solder. That's the theory anyway. So what we'll do is we'll switch over to the microscope so you can see things a little clearer. So while I'm applying some fresh solder onto the PPU solder joints, I'm going to shout out all my awesome channel members. Now channel members have gone one step above subscribing to the channel, and they actually provide a small monthly donation to help support it. If you want to become a channel member, then sign up using the QR code in the corner of the screen or the link in the video description. But before I shout out those awesome people, I have to shout out another awesome person, and that is Jim Wood, who has sent me this Famicom to work on. Thank you, Jim. It really proved to be quite an interesting journey. So let's get on to the channel members, and they are at time of editing the Kip fans, and then the Kip early birds, who are Tim Salt, Sorcerer Stan, Mark C and Rob Lynn. Then I love these people so much I could kiss their little foreheads. They are the Kip lovers, and they are Bella Webster, Stesticspix, Lawrence, Scott Kendall, Props Retrofix, Coaster Chelsea, DD Media Production, Lee Benz, Ann and David Hughes, Danielle Adele, James and Danny, and Alex Bennett. Then these are the nuttiest of the fruitcakes. They are the Kip Nutters, and they are Becky Boobar and Alan Green. And then right at the top there, boom, we've got our Kip Mental, and that is RJ Prate. Thank you so much, RJ, for your support. It is really appreciated. And big love to all my channel members, no matter what level you're at. Anyway, I think Kip's got something to say. So now that fresh solder's on there, we've got to use the solder sucker gun and suck it all up and hopefully release the PPU. So I couldn't film it on camera, but I've just used a bit of hot air to finish it off and pulled out the PPU. So with our PPU chip removed, we need to install a socket, which came in the kit. And just make sure you have the little cutout lined up with a little cutout there. So it's best to just tack in some corners just to make sure it's all flat and in position well, and then you can go along and solder the rest in. So let's do that. Yeah, that looks like it's in pretty evenly. I'm going to solder this onto the board, sort of crisscrossing across the sides, because I sometimes find with these plastics, they don't like a lot of heat for a long period of time, and it can make the pins come out of them. I'm going to sort of zip across the board in a random fashion, just so the heat is spread out a bit. So yeah, I'll get on with that. Really quite pleased with that. Really quite pleased with that. Excellent. So yeah, there's our socket for our board to go into. And we've got to get this board to go that way round in there. Now it's slightly obscured by this capacitor here. And it actually says in the instructions for the original Lava RGB board that you've got to remove this capacitor and also this transistor here. Now, I don't know about that. That doesn't feel right. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend this capacitor down so it clears where this board needs to go, and we'll see how we get on. Yeah, but I feel like the capacitor and the transistor are probably quite important. So yeah, I'm just going to bend that capacitor down so it's clear out of the way. Well, I had to get a bit creative, but I think that's in position. If there is a problem, I could probably just cut those components out, but it does seem weird to remove those. So our board will sit like that. Now we actually need to use the round-headed pins for this section. We use the square-headed pins, these guys, later on. So yes, we need to chop this 40 load of round-headed pins in half. So 20 go in there and 20 go in there. So it needs to be this way round. I know the writing's upside down, but this is the way it needs to go. And what we've really got to do, we've just got to get this soldered in. So again, I'm going to do it while it's in position on here, and I'm going to move around different places on the board, and so we're not concentrating the heat too much in one spot. And it'll be good to sort of give it a little press down with my finger as we do like the corners, so we know it's all square. Right, so that's all in flat and true. Now this is where you just need to double check everything. Make sure you've got this round the right way, because we're getting to the point now where if you get it wrong, it could all go horribly wrong for you. So I'm just going to whiz through and get the rest of these soldered in position. So with that all soldered in position, we actually need to take this off the main board now. So yeah, good luck everyone. Excellent. So now it's time to start work on the actual mod board itself. So we need to take the square pin guys, so this is the first one, and we put it underneath the board so it's poking through, and we solder along that top edge there. And then we get the other square pin guy and put it in here and solder him in position there. So in the end, we'll have them soldered in like that. And the spare ones are going to be for our socket that our PPU is eventually going to sit into. Now it's going to be a bit tricky for me to show you me soldering these pins in on camera. I can't really use the microscope, but you need to make sure they are absolutely straight as anything, or else you are in for a whole world of pain. So it's usually a good idea to do one end and make sure that's straight, and then do the other end and make sure that's straight, and then maybe do the middle. I move along soldering them sort of not all in a row. I kind of jump from one end to the other just to spread out the heat, and just keep on double checking. So yeah, it's quite a slow and laborious process, and I assume that's probably why we've gone for the square pins here, because it just helps you keep it a little bit straighter. So yeah, I will do that off camera because it's going to be fiddly to film, and when we come back, those will be soldered in perfectly there. Okay, so that is all of them in position. It's just a lot of soldering really, wasn't too bad. Right, so now we need to put our socket on our Lava RGB board. We've got to make sure we've got the little indent lined up with the little indent on the board. And that goes in something like that. And again, we've got to flip it over, and we've got to sort of hold it down onto the board to make sure it's soldered in position. So I'm not going to show you this. There's a hell of a lot of soldering on this mod. So I've just got to solder the socket in position. So another 40 solder joints. Joy. Right, so our socket is soldered on. It went pretty well really. So what I'm going to do now is get this socket installed onto the board, because you might remember we have this plug with all the wires that will go to different places on the board, and yeah, we've just got to put the socket in position. Now obviously you don't need the socket, you could just run wires directly from the pad, but because we've got this nice handy plug with the wires already on it, it makes sense to put the socket on the board. So like as we've been doing, we'll get like the first and last pin in position, make sure it's straight, and then we can bang through the rest. And there we have it, one socket soldered nicely in position. So as you can see, we've got our connector on the top here, and then we've got our socket here, and then if we flip it over, we've got our square pins that we need to put onto the board we made earlier. So it goes on a bit like this. Now you have to be super careful here because it's very, very tight fitting, squeezing these pins down into position. So yeah, let me just fiddle with that. But there we go, that is in position. The boards are sort of all stacked up correctly. So now the last bit of soldering on this board, I think, we've just got to solder what we pushed down into position, and then this board is finished. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this has got an N and P jumper for NTSC and PAL, and now because there's no documentation about this, I don't know whether it's PAL by default or NTSC by default, so we might have to solder the jumper onto the NTSC part, maybe. I don't even know if this works. I'm just guessing that it's NTSC and PAL. That is the problem with being one of the first people to do this and there not being any documentation for it. But hopefully we'll be all right. Let me get this under the microscope and soldered into position. So you can see those pins poking through, and yeah, like everything else, I'm just going to get the corners nipped down and then I'll do the rest of them. Again, moving in different directions so the heat is spread out, because you can see here, a bit of the heat has already melted this guy up here, which is suboptimal, but it should be okay. Right, so yeah, I've just got to solder the rest of those. I'm not even going to time lapse it. I'm just going to go through it. You've just got to be super careful not to get these plastic guys with the soldering iron. So yeah, just be careful. Take it slowly and you'll be okay. Well, there we have it. All together. A And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So this finished board will go into our Nintendo soonish. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the PPU in here so it's sort of safe, not knocking around on my table anymore. So once again, the notches all line up. And yeah, I've just got to make sure I don't press anywhere too much where there's other pins I don't want to bend. So there we have our socketed PPU on our finished board. Right, let's switch back to the not microscope and we can have a look at what comes next. Right, just so you get a better look at everything, that is our finished board with the PPU in place. So we're going to put this Fam Buddy in position now, and on this side is going to tap off these pins here, and then on the other side of it we've got some nice connections that will correspond to our wiring. I was going to put this in position first, but I think what I will do is actually tin these pads where our wires have got to go. But yeah, I'm just going to tin them before I put them on here, just so it's done. So I've just fluxed it up, pretty standard for me. I'll just get some solder on these pins. And that also allows you to see which connection is which. Right, so now we can turn our attention back to this board, and we can unscrew this screw here and take it out. And then we get our little board and we sort of line it up with the solder joints and screw it in position. Now, I've not fully tightened that screw. If I tighten it too much, it might bend the board slightly, and I won't be able to get this as flat as it is now. So I think I will get these pins soldered in position, and then once that's done, we can screw that right home. But yeah, you can sort of see now how this works. There, we've just got a nice collection of pads ready for our wires to go onto. But first, we need to solder this down. I love how this is designed. It's just so beautiful and clever. So yeah, I'm just going to do this pin and this pin to start with. So we're just sort of injecting the RGB signal into the original port. It's so smart. Right, so now those corners are done, I can just do the rest of them. Beautiful. Right, I'm just going to screw this in position now. Yeah, I've not tightened it very hard, but that should be perfect. So now it's time to run the wires that will be sending the video signal to our connector. So they're already tinned. We don't use all of them. We don't use the O, but we do use all the other ones. Now I'm going to put on screen the wire colour from my kit that goes to each of these connectors. Now you'll have to double check the wires on your kit because it might be different, but they're not in any way logical. So ground, which would normally be black, is actually red. The green signal is a blue wire, and it's just a bit of a mess. So look at what I've got on the screen, and that's how mine is wired with the corresponding wire colours. Just double check. So now we come to wiring our white, black and red wires, and they go to our player 1 controller port. So the reason why we're soldering these wires to the controller port is because there's no actual physical switch to change the palettes. You do it with a key combination on the joypad. So yeah, this is just wiring that up. And they are clock, latch and data. Now in the instructions it says you don't need to solder the reset line, but in all the pictures it's soldered. I might solder it, and then if it doesn't work or there's a problem, I'll disconnect it. But we'll get the 3 that we definitely know have to be wired up. So I'm just going to put a blob of fresh solder where each of those is going to go. So we'll do our clock line first. Then our latch. And then our data. Yeah, so this little guy here is our reset line. I'll solder it and then we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's not a thing. We can just snip the yellow wire. So unless the jumper needs soldering for PAL and NTSC, I think that's all the soldering done. And after all that, our board is ready to go in position, hopefully. So it's going to go something like that, with our connector going in here. There we go, that's in. I'll just bring the connector around here. That's sort of how it needs to be. So I've got it all squared up in the case now, and I think it looks pretty neat. I've got a bit of Captain tape on there just to hold these wires in position, just so they don't foul on any screw posts when I put it together. But I think we're good to go. Let me screw these in. It really helps to have a magnetic screwdriver when you're doing these long boys. Let's put the top on, offer that up. Yeah, that feels all right. So instead of you having to watch me put the last 4 screws in, let's just use the power of YouTube, and we can do it by magic. There we go. It's back together. Does it work? Don't know. But I think it's going to be okay. The only sort of question is whether that capacitor and transistor really did need to be removed. If you've got any idea about that, maybe let me know in the comments. Why might you remove that? I'm feeling quietly confident. I don't know if the reset line is meant to be connected. There is mention of being able to think, if you press A and select, I think you can reset the console from the controller. So that's probably that. So let me just move things around, get my little screen, and we can see if we've done this. Cartridge is in, controller's in, all ready to go. Turn on the power. Okay, EverDrive's lit up. Oh, we've got sync. Yes! Oh my God. Right, okay. Really wasn't expecting that to work. Oh, that's amazing. Right, let's go into just a bit of Super Mario Brothers. Wow. That looks incredible. That is like night and day difference from how it was. So pressing select and up cycles through different color palettes. And then you just let go of it on the one you like the most. I do actually quite like the Player Choice 10 one there. And yeah, I think I said select and A resets the console. Yes, it does. Right, I'll tell you what I'll do now. Let me go through some games of how they looked before I did this mod and how they look now after I've done the mod. And I think you'll be quite shocked at the difference. I can't get over just how good it looks compared to how it did a few hours ago. The transformation is just mad. And I'm not even using a super expensive SCART cable. I've just got a very cheap RGB SCART cable that I got from Amazon, I think. And the picture quality is just glorious. Now, obviously, the different palettes are really down to personal taste. I think it's one of those things that you have to cycle through and see which ones you quite like. It's a difficult install to do, absolutely, and it is hairy at times, especially when you're trying to take the PPU out of the board and you've got to solder everything nice and straight, and you've got to try and avoid burning the bits of plastic you've just put in. Like, although I use my hot air to get the PPU out right at the end, you could do it very much with a soldering iron and maybe a sort of magnifying device. You don't necessarily need a microscope. And yeah, it all went together pretty well. Now, I really hope this has helped you if you found this video, because you have found that there are no proper instructions, especially for the version 2 of this Lava RGB mod. So please give this video a like, maybe drop a comment, because it all helps and it will push it out to more people who are looking for this kind of video. But yeah, for around 50 quid, you actually get a pretty decent mod, and it has completely transformed this Famicom AV. And this mod will work in the old top loader Famicom or the front loading NES, and I think even the twin Famicom from Sharp, I think that's who made it. You can put this mod in all of those, but obviously sort of how you wire up the video output is a bit different depending on those models, but the principle is the same. But yeah, it's a very nicely priced mod. Now, something I completely forgot was we didn't set the jumper pin, and it's working fine on NTSC, so maybe that's its default. Maybe if we're running on a PAL console, we'd have to set it into the P position. I don't know. I will probably try doing this mod on a PAL console at some point. So yeah, I really hope Jim is happy with the work I've done on here, because I am over the moon. And I hope you all enjoyed it too at home. So let me know what you think of this mod in the comments. Let me know in the comments if you can see any reason why I should have removed those capacitors and that transistor. And yeah, I'm really happy. I'm over the moon. So what a great way to end. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But for now, it's game over.